Steve Merrill's here to break down the conference championship games right here at the Voice of College Football. Check out Steve's insight and information as he stops by each and every week. You can do that on the various team channels. Here on the Clemson channel, of course, we get the Tigers playing for an ACC championship. Are they motivated? I don't know. They're used to competing for college football playoff appearances. They've lost a second game, however. And we've got a North Carolina team that's lost 2 consecutive games, Steve. So a couple teams limping into a conference title game.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about, the flat spots the last few weeks with teams who are looking ahead. And, obviously UNC's been in that situation for numerous weeks here because they'd already locked up basically a bid 3 weeks ago for this game. And they, of course, had a terrible loss against Georgia Tech as a 3-touchdown favorite a few weeks back. And then you thought maybe they'd get up for their in-state rival, NC State. And I think they did get up for that game last week. NC State's a good team. NC State's now in the top 25 as well. But yeah, back-to-back losses as a touchdown and a 3-touchdown favorite the last 2 weeks. And now, huge role reversal as they're a touchdown underdog on a semi-neutral field here. It's Charlotte, North Carolina. Clemson will travel well up from South Carolina, though. So we'll call this a neutral field. And Charlotte, several hours away, obviously, from the Raleigh area. So I think this will be an equal field for both teams. I really think it is a neutral field. I look at my database projection. It has Clemson by 9.3. That's really no home field factored in for either team. So I do think there's some value with Clemson in this game. And I do feel like Clemson's a better team. North Carolina, very capable offensively. It's been that way for several years. But defensively, they're a mess. And that's been their problem the last couple weeks. They gave up. They only scored 17 against Georgia Tech. Offense was actually the problem in that game, surprisingly. Last week, though, a somewhat offensive challenged NC State team did score 30 on them and threw the ball pretty well. They did limit the rushing attack. I don't think that'll be the case this week, though. Clemson's run the ball for almost 200 yards a game. Not throwing the ball great, and that has been UNC's bigger weakness this year. But once again, Clemson holds a substantial defensive edge. They're over a yard per play better on the season, and they give up almost 10 points less per game. So huge defensive edge for Clemson. Neither team has anything to play for as far as national rankings anymore. You would think that would affect Clemson more, but to be honest, I think Clemson's kind of known they've been out of the mix, and I think that showed last week with a bad loss outright as a 14-point favorite, but I think that is because they were looking ahead to this ACC title game, and this is now their biggest game of the season. It's bigger than any bowl game they'll be in. So we'll take the better team, the much better defensive team with some value, because once again, my database simulation projects over a 9-point win. Like to get 7 or less. Currently, as we head into the weekend, we're seeing 7.5s across the board. I even see 1-8 out there in Las Vegas at the South Point. So I don't think, Mark, we're going to get down to that key number of 7. But either way, I like Clemson to win this one by probably 10 or more.
We are covering championship weekend from all angles. We get Steve's insight on the betting lines. We've got a breakdown with insiders, writers, commentators coming in representing the various teams. And then also I'm doing a numbers breakdown. So, for example, Clemson and North Carolina, all their common opponents, yards per play breakdowns, percentages, third and fourth down conversion, the whole gamut right here at the Voice of College Football. Check out Steve's work at wagertalk.com for the NFL and the NBA, in addition to college football. And, of course, his under-the-radar selection exclusive to our Voice of College Football community. How do you get there? Patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV, where Steve is 11-1 against the spread on his under-the-radar selection. Steve, thanks.
Hey, and Mark, by the way, I gave you a shout-out on my college football top 25 video last week at wagertalk.com. I mentioned your breakdown for that Oregon State, the common opponents. You'd mentioned it, so I went and checked it out later. The 6 common opponents out of 11 games. Fantastic stuff. Oregon had a huge offensive yards per play edge, but as you know, Oregon State had the big defensive yards per play edge. We'll check out the Clemson numbers here. My guess is, Mark, they probably have a pretty big defensive edge as well over UNC.
Absolutely. And you can imagine the Michigan-Purdue comparison or the Georgia-LSU comparisons, very one-sided. Good stuff. Steve, we appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Mark.